Well, hello. Let's get right to it with the King's Indian defense. White could open either pawn, the queen's or king's pawn, and then you get your knight out, your king's knight, and they get their other pawn out. Then maybe get ready for the, queen's gambit or whatever. It's not really focusing on white right now. It's focusing on black and what you're going to do, and so you get your bishop out, and of course you're looking at this fianchetto, but you're protecting this knight and protecting this square and giving your king a wonderful place to go and hang out and play the incredible game of chess as you go, to do your best to win the game. And it gives you a lot of options on how to do. So we're just going to run through a little scenario here of some moves that might happen. So you might get this far, etc. But you get the idea, I think, on this particular opening. The next opening is the Nimzo Indian defense. And we'll look at this particular opening, and we will just, while opening with the queen's pawn, and then you open with your knight, and they get their other pawn out, and you get your king's pawn up, and they get their knight out, and you go and pin the knight against the king, and then they make a move and you castle. And this really is the Nimzo Indian defense. It gives you a pattern to begin. You get to this pattern, you've achieved what your intentions were to achieve with this particular opening. You can go from there. And openings are just, again, a way to get you started and get you something familiar to move into the chess game, because chess games are going to be unfamiliar. I mean, there are more different options in chess moves than there are. I forget the number. It's more than there are particles in the universe. That seems outlandish, but I heard that recently, so I heard it on the internet, so it's got to be true, right? At any rate, there's a lot of different options. The third opening that I want to cover is the Karo Kahn, and you're probably familiar with the Karo Kahn by black, but it's really good to get familiar with every move for the Karo Kahn, and then some different lines for it, and some different ways to make use of it, and different options that you have. So they open with the king's pawn. You get your c6 pawn out. They take full control of the center. Why not? Because you're obviously don't know what you're doing. So then you get your queen's pawn up, and they advance. So this is the advanced variation. Karo Kahn advanced variation, which just means that your opponent advanced the e pawn. So you get your bishop out, and I really like getting the bishop out past this pawn row before I advance this pawn. So they get their knight out, and you advance the pawn, and you have this bishop. And of course, this bishop is looking right at this square. It's easy to see that it would be not too difficult to go and get your knight into position to take the square, and then you would fork the rook and the king. That's awesome. And they just continue, and you go up. So if this particular game was continuing, you can see that they might take this pawn, and then you take. And then you're focused on this pawn here. And it would be a simple matter to get your knight up, and then get your knight up here, and attack this pawn, putting the queen and the rook as a fork. So this is an incredible option. Of course, you have to get your knight out. And if depending on what they do, you would get your knight out. And once you had your knight out, then if they, move this up where they could get their bishop out, and you castle, and then you just continue to play the game. There's just a lot of different options that you can use with the Karo Kahn. Mostly, make moves that better your position and don't make mistakes. Eventually, your opponent will make a mistake, and you take advantage of that mistake. And the opening helps put you in a position to recognize that. The next opening, and opening number 4, is the Najdorf Sicilian defense. And this particular pattern opening gives you some power, and it's a little bit unexpected. They get the king's pawn out, and you open with your your c pawn all the way to 5, and then they get their knight out, and you get your pawn out. And really, this pawn structure is the Najdorf Sicilian defense. We're carrying it on a little further. etc. And see how the game might progress as you went on and got to where you could castle. But that was the Najdorf Sicilian defense, and it gives you different ways to see how you're going to attack your opponent and enter into the middle game, and of course win your game because you understand some different opening principles. So then the next one is the Berlin defense, and the Berlin defense is another opening for black that gives you an incredible pattern to follow. King's pawn out, king's pawn answers your knight out, and they pin your knight, or they go and attack it anyway, and they castle, and then you take that free pawn. But the Berlin defense really is just, this particular scenario is the Berlin defense. We're going to play a little longer here to just to have a little fun. Of course, when they do that, you're going to have trouble. Obviously, you're going to have to protect here, because if they move their knight here and put you in check at the same time, they're going to get your queen for a knight, which won't be pleasant at all. So you could easily just do anything. You get your knight in the way, get your bishop in the way, get this bishop in the way, whatever, so to keep you from having that difficulty as you play. Now then, we get to my personal favorite, the bonus opening here at the end. The bonus opening is the Owen's defense. The most common opening for white is the king's pawn, and then you raise your pawn to b3, and then they're going to probably take control of the center. They think you're an idiot. Why shouldn't they take control? And then you get your bishop out to fianchetto this entire diagonal. And then they realize they've got to protect this pawn. No worries. They use their knight, because that protects the pawn and keeps you from taking it, and they're happy with that. So you get your pawn up, and they think, good grief, this guy, what in the world is he doing? They might get their other knight out. And at that point, you go and you block the knight from being able to take, to take this pawn. It takes away that defender, and they may not realize that right off the bat. And maybe they get their bishop out to continue to get ready to castle. You get your knight out, and now you're applying even more pressure to this pawn, regardless of what happens to this knight. And then if they castle, and you castle, ooh, you don't want that to happen. We want it to happen before that. Well, it would be the same thing. If both of you castled, and then they come and they try to kick your bishop, if you take the knight and then they take, you still have this free pawn, which is fantastic. It gives you the ability to, to have some more power there, because you're looking now at, if you had your queen here, you would be able to, put the king in checkmate, because your bishop is still in the fianchetto mode. There's other ways that this could work out. Is if you if they got this if they got the bishop out of the way for some reason, if they were maybe a newer player, and you had the bishop here, and they cause you trouble, and then you get this here, and they take this, and then you take this pawn. Well, if they just try to especially at lower levels of ELO, they might just go here and try to make your bishop go away. Instead, you take here, and there's really nothing they can do to keep you from taking the rook. And so they make a move, and you get the rook, etc. They might go here, but that wouldn't really help any. You just get a free bishop. But if you weren't paying attention, and they went there, and you did something else, then they could, of course, take your rook. And I've actually had similar things happen to me. All right, those are the 5 openings. And if you want to go back to one, or study one, or have some suggestions or comments, or which one's your favorite, which ones are using for black, I look at when I play black, I look at it as a way to disrupt my opponent and make it where they have difficulty accomplishing their plans, because I can disrupt them as the black side of the board. I'm having a lot of fun playing black. I used to not enjoy it at all, but now with the Owen's defense, I am having a lot more wins and a lot more enjoyability. Thank you. If you're at this point, sure invite you to subscribe. Have a fantastic day. Talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.